Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. As you can probably guess, I am not the artist who drew this amazing sketch here, and that is because today I am beyond excited to be sharing another collaboration video with you, but this time with Arleesha from Arleebean. If you don't already know Arleesha's work, she has an amazing, incredibly fast-growing YouTube channel where she does these incredibly amazing portraits in this beautiful loose layered style with these beautiful colors. Arleesha also has an amazing Skillshare platform where she has classes on watercolor portraits, figure drawing, anatomy classes, and experimenting. She is a wonderful teacher with a great style, and if you like her artwork, I would highly recommend checking her out. I'll go ahead and put links in the description so that you can go ahead and find her after you're done watching this video. I have been a huge fan of Arleesha's artwork for quite some time now. Her sketching in particular is something that is just so gorgeous to me. I love her line art, I love the forms that she has, and her Skillshare classes are really wonderful for conveying that information. But I just was dying to get a chance to work with her. I'm actually the one that contacted her about wanting to do a collaboration, and to be honest, I wanted to sneak in before her channel gets so huge and amazing that I would have less of a chance in my mind of her saying yes to one of these collaborations. I was so honored and humbled when she said she had a similar opinion about my channel, so here we are with our collaboration. As you saw before, we decided to swap line art, which I'll explain more about in just a few moments, but we also wanted these to be two pieces that would look harmonious when placed next to each other. So for that reason, we also decided that we wanted to use similar palettes. She used her Sennelier paints, and I used some equivalents in some other brands that I have. Our colors that we chose overall were Quinacridone Rose, which is PB19, Indian Throne Blue is PB60, Phthalo Green Yellow shade, which is PG36, and Nickel Azo Yellow, which is PY150. After playing with this base palette of 4 colors for quite some time, I really decided that I desperately needed a yellow ochre as well. If you guys have been around the channel for a while, you know my opinions on this beautiful, lovely color that I just feel is really indispensable in just about any palette. I'm really not very familiar with either PY150 or working on hot press paper, which is what she sent her sketch on. So I felt like I really needed some of that yellow ochre to have a little bit of balance in terms of things that I was familiar with and unfamiliar with in this piece. So let me tell you a little bit more about our concept for these pieces. We really wanted to work with both of our strengths. So in doing the line art, we each created something that we were comfortable making. We decided that we wanted to have a humanoid type figure that Arleesha drew and an animal companion that I drew. We eventually came up with a little backstory for this kind of druidy type forest elf and his crow familiar. The general parameters that we set for ourselves was that we wanted this to be a larger format type painting, so we did a 9x12 sheet of paper, and we didn't specify whether or not it was hot or cold press. We just said that we wanted them to be cotton, so that's how I ended up with a hot press paper from Blick Premier, which, oh my gosh, this paper is incredible. I've only ever used hot press from Arches before, and I really did not enjoy that experience, and I've heard from other people as well that that is not the best representation of a hot press paper. So thank you to Arleesha for sending this Blick Premier to me and showing me that there are good things in the world with this hot press paper, but it was still very different to work on. She ended up with an Arches cold press paper, which I guess she probably doesn't work with as often as hot press paper working with portraits, but I don't know for certain. Back to those parameters that we had set. So we wanted them to be larger format, they were going to be on a cotton press paper, and we wanted them to be facing in opposite directions, so either looking at each other or kind of facing away from each other back to back. Arleesha did request at the initial stages of our planning for a deer. She said she really wanted to paint one, and I did play around with those sketches. I sent them to her, but we also came up with this idea that the elf druid was kind of this foresty type creature, and that their companion would kind of bring them little shiny baubles and things like that from the forest that they found. So I thought of crows. I've been able to work with a crow before, and they just have these wonderful dispositions and intelligence, and I just thought it was the perfect companion for this particular story that we were setting up. I went ahead and sent her sketches for that, and we eventually ended up with a sketch that I was really happy with, and if you'd like to see that, I'll link her video at the end of this one so you can go ahead and check that out and see how she did painting my piece. So coming back to our elf friend, for the hair I wasn't sure at the very beginning stages if I wanted to do it kind of blackish like the crow would be, or if I wanted to do something different, and eventually I decided, you know, I really love teal, and I think teal would be a really cool color to use here. So with my limited palette, I mixed together the PB60 with the PG36 to get this nice greenish aqua color, and I think it did a really good job at creating a lot of depth. When I added a lot of water, it was able to make these really soft, loose washes, and then I was able to layer over the top of that with darker versions and more concentrated versions of the same paint to get some added texture. Following the hair, the next part of the painting that I wanted to work on were the feathers that were from kind of the shoulder pad pauldron thingamajigs for his shoulders, and I decided that I wanted them to be either crow or raven feathers like his familiar. I knew that I wanted there to be some variance in the color that were going to be on these feathers so that it just wasn't a solid black mass, and I decided that I wanted the base color to be purple. Now the likely choice would be to go to the permanent rose and Indian throne blue, but it was a little bit of, I don't know, the shade of purple that it created just wasn't what I was looking for. So then I tried mixing the phthalo green yellow shade with the red, and I got this deep, gorgeous, inky purple that I knew was just perfect for what I was looking for. I wet down the whole area of the feathers over the shoulders and did an initial wash with a lot of water and some of the pigment, and you'll see me working here. As I move from left to right, you'll see the paper starting to get drier and I have more control over where I'm setting things down. After that layer dried, it was time to go ahead and put some more defining colors in here, and this is where I spent the vast majority of my time on this painting. It took many layers of paint and fidgeting to go through everything, so I've condensed it down to just showing you kind of the process for what the feathers was like, and then cutting out all the repetitive bits. So I started each feather with the quinacridone rose so that we could have a nice little relief of darkness, if that makes any sense, so that we have some areas of lighter contrast. And then I would put down some of the darker colors. And the darker colors I used varied between the inky dark purple, the teal that I use like in the hair, and then also more of a blue color with mostly that Indian throne blue. This is the first time I've ever taken on a type of piece like this with this many feathers and details, and so I definitely had some learning issues along the way, roadblocks, there we go. And if I could do it over again, it would probably be a little bit different since I streamlined the process towards the end. But long story short, here's after that initial base layer of all the feather colors got put in, and I'm going back through with the quinacridone rose to really bring in those highlighted areas once again, and then also layering in some of the darker colors with some more rich vibrancy so that it's not just a dull gray type of color in those areas. We're going to come back to the feathers and I'll finish up telling you about the process that I used to make those towards the end of the video, but then I wanted to go ahead and move to doing some of the details on the piece. I thought about it for quite some time on whether or not I wanted this like piece of fabric that was over the shoulder pad to be the rose color or to be this nickel azo yellow that I hadn't really utilized yet in the painting. I was worried about introducing a new color, but I had several areas that I was able to introduce this yellow color to, and I did mix in some of that quinacridone rose to deepen up some of the values and make them a little more orangey so that it wasn't such a harsh shade of yellow. Moving on to the staff, I went ahead and pulled in some of the yellow ochre so that we had the yellow ochre in another place aside from just the skin tone, and I think that went okay. I still feel like maybe I could have done a little bit more to that area to make it a little bit more lively, but it's not the star of this painting, so I think it's okay that it takes a bit of a back seat. After the staff was dry, oh, wait, I didn't tell you about the staff. Okay, so I mixed the brown color from the three, nope, not the three primaries, the red, the yellow, and the green again rather than that blue. I wanted to keep that green really consistent in the undertones of the painting so that it all kind of tied together really well. And oh my goodness, okay, you guys know that I haven't used PG36 very often. I have had PG7 on my palette instead, which is the blue shade of phthalo green, but this painting is making me a believer. I really loved working with it here. So anyway, I used that brown that had more of the nickel azo yellow and the quinacridone rose in it rather than the green shade to fill in the staff, and then use another layer to put in some of the textural details. Then when I moved to the face, I knew that I needed to add another color in, and even though I wasn't feeling brave enough to kind of do the loose washes that Arleesha uses, I did convince myself to go ahead and use a purple tone, the same purple tone that I used on the feathers with perhaps a little bit more of the red, to go ahead and shade all of the areas on the face. I was completely comfortable using these shadow tones like along the neck and the hairline, and it wasn't until I got more on the front of the face that I started to get a little bit of anxiety over putting down these big blocks of color. I was so worried that I was going to ruin the first wash that was so pristine and beautiful underneath with a big blotch of color, and I'm happy to say that I really like the way it turned out. I'm glad I was a little bit brave enough to go ahead and try this. I think it would have been a bit boring without it. So thank you to Arleesha and to all of the other artists on YouTube who have shown me the power of shading, particularly portraits, with some variance in color. I didn't originally show you the first wash of the hand just because I felt it was a little bit repetitive, and in the interest of time I went ahead and edited that down, but it was just a glaze of that yellow ochre and quinacridone rose mixture, and now here I am putting down glazes of the purple and the red, so we have some shadows in different areas. I really like how this turned out, and I think this area of the body is the closest to what Arleesha kind of works on. I'm not saying that it's as flowy or as beautifully loose as she does, but it's the closest I came, so I was pretty happy with it. Then there was the conundrum of what to do for the background. I know Arleesha paints these really beautiful backgrounds and often has a lot of foliage in her paintings, and I thought about it and I was like, you know what? That's just not what one of my strengths are, and I really don't want to detract from this beautiful character that she created and that I've had so much fun painting by ruining it from putting something in the background that shouldn't have been there. So despite knowing that her initial sketch did include a tree line back there, I just decided I wanted to use a mixture of the nickel azo yellow with a little bit of the quinacridone rose so that we had this beautiful flowing background that complemented both the fabric and the jewelry on the rest of the piece. So I have a little bit of footage showing you some work that I did with a white gel pen, and oh boy, it was one of those things that I knew it was a risk putting things down, but I was like, oh, it'll be fine, right? Like, I see a lot of people use this for highlights and for adding details, especially in darker areas. So I put it on the hair and the shawl and the feathers, and it just ended up being so prominent in the piece and not accenting the piece, but rather taking away from it. So I spent a good amount of time off camera going through and like wetting all of the areas in small sections and then lifting up some of the pigment. Luckily with the Uniball Signo, it is a water-based pen and it's not waterproof, so I was able to pick up some of that color and really push back these highlights a little bit so that they were a little bit softer. I think I was able to dial it back enough that the rest of the painting makes sense. But to finish off these feathers, since they didn't have as much contrast as I was initially thinking, I went back in with a really thick mixture of both the reddish purple type color and then also the darker blues and greens to kind of give outlines to some of the different areas down here. I also used this technique of using these stronger colors on the hair, but I apologize, I don't know what happened to that footage, so all I have to show you is the final result of the painting. And I am really happy with how this turned out. I had such an amazing time working with Arleesha's line art and to paint this portrait that I'm hoping will inspire me to work on other pieces in the future that are more humanoid in character. I just want to take a moment to say this is the most collaborative collaboration that I have ever worked on, and I am so thrilled that I got to do this type of piece. It's always fun when we get to work with other artists on YouTube where we have a challenge or something that we're moderately involved in, but then the ending is a surprise for both of us and we don't see that until the videos launch. But this was a collaboration in every sense of the word, from the line art to talking about concepts to picking the color palettes and to sharing this entire experience together. It was really incredible, and I am just I'm so excited that I got to do this. Thank you so much to Arleesha for doing this collaboration with me. I am so honored that I get to have this piece of art up on my wall from now until forever as a memento of this collaboration that we did, and a piece of artwork that wouldn't have been able to be possible without both of us working on it. If you would like to see them side by side now, I'm going to go ahead and show you an image, so if you don't want a spoiler, go ahead and look away. Look away. Okay, you looking away? Got it. Okay, so here they are next to each other, facing each other, and I hope that you'll go ahead and check out her channel if you haven't already to see her creating this crow. So I want to thank all of you guys for watching this video, and if you're new, maybe you came over from Arleesha's channel, hello and welcome. If you'd like to see more content from me, make sure to hit the subscribe button and that little bell icon so you get notified when my new videos come out. To everyone who is watching, if you enjoyed this video, please give it a nice big thumbs up. It really helps out the channel, and I will of course see you in the next video. Until then, happy painting.